Hey, what's up, and welcome back to the HK Rifle Works YouTube channel. Also, welcome to part 2 of the Aero Solus custom rifle build. Now, if you've missed part 1, please take a moment, jump back on the channel to check that out. Essentially what we looked at in that video is we took a look at the Grayboe Renegade stock. We opened up the barrel channel, we did a little bit of inletting and relief cutting for the action and the features on the Aero Solus. We ended up adding some grip texturing to the forend and the palm swell of the stock. And then we talked a little bit about priming and paint to get the stock exactly how we wanted it, and as you see here. So in this video, we're going to be touching base on glass bedding these rifles and how I glass bed my precision rifles. When we talk about glass bedding, essentially what it is it allows for a full contact one-to-one glove-like fit from the action into the stock. This is extremely important when you're shooting for groups, when you're shooting for precision and accuracy, to make sure that your stock is fully supported, or your action is fully supported in the stock and allows for no movement whatsoever. So these fiberglass stocks, they usually come pillar bedded. And what that means is in the rear and the front action screw portion in the stock, there are metal pillars in there, and that allows your action to sit on and then actually torque your bottom metal and your action against those pillars to create some rigidity there and repeatability. But it just doesn't compare to that 100% contact, depending on how you bed your action, that 100% contact like glass bedding does. And like I said, it just allows for no movement. Your action is cradled radially there. And when you're shooting for dispersion, it's going to give you the most consistent groupings possible in terms of looking at a good glass bedding job. Let's jump into the video. We will get into glass bedding, so make sure you stick around. Now that we know the importance of bedding your action into your rifle stock for precision work, I'm going to walk you through the steps that I take when I end up bedding my rifles. So starting off, there's a few different ways that we can do this. Some folks like just bedding the recoil lug. Some folks like to do a full length bedding job all the way back to the tang. Some folks just do the tang and the recoil lug. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. For the purpose of this video, I am going to look at a complete full length bedding job, nothing in front of the recoil lug, and I'm just going to go right back to the tang. So definitely stick with me. I'm going to be rolling in some pictures and just explain to you how I do this. So first things first, what I like to use is I like to pick an appropriate bedding compound. So there's Marine Tex Gray, there's DevCon, there's like glass bedding kits out there. Brownells has a few of them. I've seen people use JB Weld and some other options there, but for now, we're going to be using Marine Tex, and that's essentially what I like the most, and DevCon's pretty good too. So diving into this, the first thing that I like to do is I like to prep my action and I like to prep my stock. So let's start at the stock and then we'll move to the action. So what I like to do in the stock space is I like to get some really, really low grit sandpaper, so really coarse grit sandpaper, and then just rough everything up. I want to make sure that the bedding compound has the proper place to adhere to the stock and it doesn't pull up, it doesn't flake, crack, anything like that. I want to make sure that it's completely going to bed to this stock. So I'll either rough everything up, I'll take a little rotary tool and just like make some divots, or I'll make some little pockets or something just so that that bedding compound can flow into there. On the action side of things, what I like to do is when you're prepping the action, since we're going to be working with actually like steel reinforced bedding compound, when we press the action into the stock, I don't want to say press it, but when we set it into the stock to start the bedding process, the one thing you don't want to do is have that bedding compound get all the way up into all the nooks and crannies in your stock. So what I do is I take plumber's putty, or I'll take, you can even use like Play-Doh if you want, but I use plumber's putty, or like clay or something like that. And I'll go in and I will fill every single component of my action where I don't want bedding compound to get into. Now again, like we're gonna put release agent everywhere, but the last thing you wanna do is be cleaning stuff out, like bedding compound oozing up in your action. Just take a moment, even if it takes a little bit of time, make sure you get everything you need to do. And one thing that I like to use, I'll get some fishing string and I'll just pack stuff full of clay, like modeling clay, and then I'll take the fishing string and then I'll just go all the way, it like cuts it, honestly. The fishing string will follow the contour of your action and it just makes a super clean cut, super easy to do, but there's just a little free tip for you there. So once we get the action prepped, I will go in with my release agent. And what I've been using recently is I've been using like some paste wax, and I've also been using Hornady one-shot case lube. So I will make sure everywhere on the action, I mean, we are complete liberal coating of release agent. I make sure to completely coat my action screws. The last thing you want to do is lock your action screws up into your receiver and then the tang here. That's going to be a pain to get apart. So you want to make sure those are completely coated so they come out easily. And then also I'll coat just my bottom metal just in case there are any drips or anything there. So once you have that situated, I like to make sure that I have a few pieces of tape around the area on my stock, so when bedding compound will ooze out, I just like it on the tape so I can pull the tape off and it's a lot easier for cleanup. So once we get that situated, it's time to mix up our bedding compound. So again, like I said, I use Marine Tex here. Mix it up. I will put 2 little pieces of tissue paper in the action screw holes just to make sure bedding compound doesn't flow into those holes while I'm applying it and spreading it evenly in the inlet in the stock. So when you're applying, one thing I like to do is make sure I am liberal with it. You'll get the right idea of how much to use, but when you set your action into your stock and it doesn't ooze out, like you've used too little, don't be afraid to put a good bit of bedding compound in there. You can always clean it off. You can always clean it up. If you use too little, you can have the problem where there's voids in your bedding, everything like that. You'll essentially have to take everything apart, skim bed it, or just, I don't want to say rip everything out, but rebed, do a new bedding job there, or rebed the action into the stock. So the point there is make sure to use the appropriate amount of bedding compound, and too much is going to be better than too little. So once we have the action prepped, filled with clay, it has release agent on it. When we have the stock ready to go, it's prepped. We've spread our bedding compound in there and we've got our tape. Now we need to set the action in there. And one thing I will mention before we set the action in, I should have mentioned this prior to, so we'll just take a pause here. I like to take some tape, whether it may be electrical tape or like some painter's tape, and I like to wrap it around my barrel until it is the same diameter of the distance around my barrel to the stock. I know that's extremely confusing to say, but hear me out. So essentially I'll just wrap my barrel in tape to make sure that my barrel is centered in the barrel channel. Just so the stock, you know, when everything gets together, I want to make sure everything's in line. So sorry for that little X up there. I just wanted to make sure to mention that you'll probably see in the pictures, but there will be painter's tape on the barrel. That's the reason why it's on there. Just to make sure everything's centered in the barrel channel. So when the action is bedded, everything's centered up. So back to setting the action into the rifle stock. So when we do this, we don't want to smush anything in too hard. We essentially want to set it in, put your bottom metal in, and run your action screws up. Once you do that, you'll just start torquing your action screws until you feel the littlest bit of resistance. You don't want to crank them down. You don't want to do anything like that. I've seen people use like medical bungee tubing or something like that. I like to use the action screws, but again, that's just me. So once you get that together, you'll torque the action screws till you just feel resistance, and then I back off 1/4 to 1/2 a turn. So from there, it's a waiting game. You usually wait about 24 hours for your bedding compound to set, then you can break everything off. But what I essentially like to do is wait, I don't know, maybe 6-8 hours. I start cleaning up, make sure you got your Q-tips and start cleaning, taking your tape off. But it's where the bedding compound isn't 100% set yet. So I'll essentially separate everything and I'll take a straight edge and I'll clean up any excess here. It's still malleable enough to where I can cut it with an X-Acto knife. And then once I get everything situated, I'll reassemble everything and then let it cure completely. So if I can offer any advice in closing, it would be to take your time, don't be too scared, make sure you prep well, use enough bedding compound, and then cleanup should be pretty easy for you on the back end. So hopefully this helps. I know there's a ton of videos on this online. This is just how I do it. It's a super simple job. Once you do it like once or twice, it's like you could do it in your sleep. It's like riding a bike. I really appreciate y'all sticking around for this video. Be on the lookout for part 3. We're going to do a whole build list of the rifle. I'm going to take you on to my initial hand loading data over here, and then we will we'll show you how the rifle's grouping. We'll show you how it's shooting, give you the velocity numbers, everything like that. But again, I appreciate you sticking through it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. Tell your dog I said hi. We'll see you in the next one.